Hello.
Is D Nash there?
Yeah, that's Dave Nash.
Yeah.
Commission meeting. I'd like to call it to order. First, I need to read a statement. Welcome, everyone. As you can tell, this meeting looks a little different due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We're holding our meeting via video teleconference. Because the City Council has declared a local emergency for the COVID-19 pandemic, state statutes allow us to hold our city meetings remotely. While we aren't meeting in person, we want to make sure the public can participate. If you have joined the Zoom meeting, you will notice that you are muted. We have a moderator on the call who will unmute those who wish to speak during the public comment portions of the meeting. Public comments will be reserved for the visitor presentations, public hearings, or special circumstances determined by the Commission. Once we reach those parts of the agenda, I will ask if there are any public comments. If you wish to speak and have joined the meeting by computer or tablet, please click on Participants on the bottom of your screen and then select the raise hand icon. If you wish to speak and have joined the meeting by phone, press *9 and raise your hand, or to raise your hand. Once your hand is raised, the moderator will announce your name or phone number and unmute your line. Please remember that public comment is provided at the discretion of the Commission and is meant to provide productive discourse on topics related to the City of Chaska. Speakers shall refrain from comment or behavior that is deemed disorderly, derogatory, obscene, indecent, or off-topic. Any person engaging in such speech or action may be muted or removed from the meeting. Those of you watching online or on Comcast Channel 15, please be aware of the following. Some of our planning commissioners, city staff, and presenters are participating in the meeting remotely. There is a delay between the live meeting and the online and cable broadcast. All commission actions will be taken by roll call vote. We are working hard to make sure your voice can be heard while we do our best to protect everyone's health and safety. Thank you for your patience and constructive feedback as we work through this unprecedented situation. Liz, would you do the roll, please?
Yes, I can. Commissioner Brass?
Here.
Cross?
Susan, you're muted.
Oops.
There you go.
Here, yes, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Susan. Commissioner Lacey?
Here.
Olson?
Here.
Riley?
Here.
Seiler?
Here.
Bobie?
Here.
Urbanski?
Here.
And Chairperson Dalkey.
Here. Thank you, Liz. Next is we want to adopt tonight's agenda. Can I get a motion to adopt the July 8th, 2020 Planning Commission agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt Commissioner Seiler tonight's July 8th Planning Commission agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second.
And second by Commissioner Bovee. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Visitor presentation. Is there anyone on the phone or in the meeting that would like to present anything that's not on tonight's agenda? Kevin, I assume there isn't anyone?
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right, next on the agenda, let's approve the previous meeting minutes. The June 10th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. Can we get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the June. Minutes.
Commissioner Lacey,
And Chris Cross is second.
thank you, Commissioner Cross. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next is the consent items. Can I get a motion to approve, or do we need to roll these, Kevin? No, we don't, okay, on the consent items. 6A, recommend approval of the sale of excess city property to in southwest Chaska. And 6B, to recommend approval of the sale of excess city property near Webb.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
On the one that, the Savannah Way, when it gets up there, how much property, if any, will be available to be developed after the road comes through and the water is there? And since it has high wooded slopes, I'm just wondering if and how much would be developable.
Sure. One second here. I can tell you exactly. 1.28 acres.
And would that have access to Savannah Way?
No. No, it has access to Boulder Lane.
That's the side part that we're selling to Harvest. But what I'm wondering is what's going to be left, because we start with over 8 acres of something.
Oh,
But
most of it's bluff, and then the remaining portions are roadway, the creek bed, and areas that we need for ponding related to the road construction.
so basically nothing.
Except for the southeast corner, there is no excess developable land remaining.
Kevin, when
Thank
you
you.
mentioned road construction, is that for Creek Road? What's the future of Creek Road?
No, that's actually the future extension of Savannah Way down to Creek Road.
Will Creek Road be improved over time, or is it going to remain a 2-lane road?
It will, in this immediate area, remain a 2-lane road. East of here, it will not. It'll cul-de-sac.
So it won't go down to
No.
downtown Chaska?
No.
Okay.
Nope. So the piece that we're talking about tonight is that upper piece on the southeast corner.
Since we've had some questions, let's, on the consent items, let's vote on the 2 items separately. So I'll take a motion to approve 6A, recommend the approval of excess property in southwest Chaska, which we just talked about.
I'll make a motion, Commissioner Bobby.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Commissioner Brass. Any further discussion?
Roll call.
We do, okay, Liz, would you do a roll call, please?
Yep. Commissioner Brass,
Aye.
Cross,
Aye.
Lacey,
Aye.
Olson, Riley,
Aye.
Seiler,
Aye.
Bovee,
Here. Aye.
Urbanski, and Chairperson Dalkey.
Aye, as
Nice.
well.
Show
Consent,
9-0.
pardon?
I show 9-0 on that.
Okay, consent item 6A passes 9-0. All right, can I get a motion for, to recommend 6B, approval of the sale of excess city property near Webb?
I have a question on this one as well. Is this sale needed for the final plat for the Del Webb approval?
Is it needed? No. If it doesn't occur with this sale, is there any possible other use? No.
Commissioner Lacey and Seiler. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Liz, would you do a roll, please?
Commissioner Barras,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Lacy,
Aye.
Olson, Riley,
Aye.
Seiler,
Aye.
Bovee, Urbanski,
Aye.
and Chairperson Dolby.
Aye as well.
I show 9-0 on
I
that.
believe we have another unanimous vote to approve. Next, item 7 is our single action item tonight, 7A. Recommend approval of the concept plan for the Harvest West North Tradition Development PC number 2020-14. Liz, you have the floor.
Thank you. Let me just get set up here.
Is there any way we can either turn Liz up a little, or you're a little muffled
Am I?
tonight? Yeah. Maybe it's just me, but
F6, Liz.
What was that?
F6.
Does that help with volume?
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the volume.
Okay. I don't think that's doing anything on my end.
You're better.
Yeah, you're a lot better. You're fine, Liz. Thank you.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can? Perfect. I'm gonna start this presentation here. So we've got a concept plan application in for the Harvest West North development. So to give you an idea of where that site is located in the city of Chaska, I've highlighted the site in red on this aerial. So County Road 44 is basically on kind of the south end of the site, plus additional low-density residential known as the Harvest West, just immediate south of the site. We have Savannah Way, which is a local collector road that abuts the eastern side. In addition to that, there's additional single-family development on the west side, or I'm sorry, the east side of Savannah Way, which encompasses the Harvest development as well as Savannah Estates. And then on the western side of the site, we have Highway 212, and then abutting on the north side, we have two single-family residences, one of them owned by the Cottrell family, the other owned by the Cruz family, and then Creek Road to the north there. So in terms of a background of this overall site, the Harvest West, which again is basically the area encompassed in blue just south of the area that we're looking at tonight, was approved in March of 2018, and that encompassed 125 lots roughly. And then since that time, two final plats were approved to basically plat out the entire area south of here. So everything to the south of this subject site is platted and ready for development, which includes detached single-family units, both kind of the traditional single-family and their detached villa product by Robert Thomas Homes, also Traditions. So tonight we're looking at a concept plan approval for the north side of the Harvest West development. They basically held off on this portion to further work on some of the characteristics and conditions of this portion of the property. So they are coming back at the beginning of the process for concept plan approval, which would encompass 119 single-family lots, and how that's broken up is 85 of those lots will be for kind of their detached single-family, traditional single-family that you see on the east side of Savannah Way, and then 34 of those lots will be for their villa product, which was also proposed on the south side. So that will be kind of a natural extension of their villa product as well. So in terms of what they're proposing, it is consistent with the city's Southwest Chaska plan and our comprehensive plan for this area. They provided a site forces exhibit to kind of show the existing conditions out there, some of the features that kind of make up the site uniquely compared to other ones. But the site acreage that we're looking at in total is about 48 acres in size. So again, the area we're looking at is highlighted in this purple dotted line area shown here. Currently, the property is mainly used as farmland, and you can kind of see that in this aerial exhibit. That was the majority of the use of the site, even to the south, with the exception of a couple areas that were used for pastures, where some of these significant trees have grown into. They've also shown 3 separate wetlands on the site. There's a smaller one kind of just north of the existing Harvest West neighborhood, a larger one that kind of butts up against Highway 212 on its eastern side, and then another larger wetland that abuts the southeasterly side of the proposed right-of-way for Savannah Way to extend north. So it's worth noting that there's 2 major street frontages for this area in particular. We have the street frontage on Savannah Way, and then the street frontage on Highway 212. The Highway 212 already has a significant berm in place that basically provides screening for this property. It's a 20-foot high berm, so it's very significant in size. It will essentially screen the property from the highway view. As I noted before, they've also have shown a very notable grove of trees kind of in the center of this subject area. And these are mainly made up of significant oaks that range in size from 30 up to 40 inches in caliber, so really significant size, as well as beautiful trees that we were able to see on site walking out there. And then it's also worth noting that there's already a 12-acre public park that's platted in the center of this site. And this was done with the original Harvest West plan. Our Southwest plan, as well as our comprehensive plan, guided a public park in this area. So they've remained consistent with that long-range planning and have platted that as part of the original Harvest West neighborhood. So it's being shown today, and will also kind of be an extension, or the corridor area will be an extension to the city park, as you'll see a little bit later, or actually on the next slide. So this is the proposed site plan. I apologize that it looks a little grainy. I'm not sure why. But again, you can see the subject site is delineated in this red dotted line to show kind of the overall layout and acreage that this project encompasses. So this concept plan is showing a lot count of 119 lots. And it basically can be broken up by the west and east sides of the site. These are not a full continuous movement around the site, and that was done intentionally to help preserve this conservation corridor in the middle, which I'll get into a little bit later. But essentially the west side is guided for those 34 villa lots. And when we say the villa lots, we're talking about single-level living homes. It will be a natural extension of the other villa product just to the south here that has already been platted. So essentially they'll be providing a natural extension and terminus to that, just to the north. So the west side will end in a cul-de-sac. They will provide the villa lots. You'll see that there's turquoise and orange dots here denoting that. Basically, the turquoise dots represent a front-load garage villa product, and then the orange represents a side-load garage villa product. So they're already building these in the existing neighborhood. If you've had a chance to go out there already, most of the roads into the site are in or available to access some of these platted lots. So you'll see a couple of those products already built out there. So again, they're just providing a natural extension to that product. And then when we look on the east side of the site, we'll also see two other cul-de-sacs provided there. One thing to note is the main access to kind of this northern area will come from another access point on the Savannah Way from Farm Hill Boulevard, which will line up with the east side of the Harvest neighborhood on the east side of Savannah Way. So that'll be a natural alignment into this northern portion of Harvest West. So as you can see, there's two cul-de-sacs here. The development is introducing, from a market standpoint, a newer line of product. From a streetscape level, it won't look too much different than what they're already providing out there, but this is what they call their legacy lots. And the green dots here, which will be kind of the easterlymost cul-de-sac provided. And these will be 55-foot wide lots, so they'll be a little bit smaller than their typical single-family lots, but they'll be a little bit bigger than the villa-sized lots to, again, provide a little bit more variety for people looking at buying a house in this neighborhood. And then lastly, kind of the inner easterly cul-de-sac, shown in blue here or purple, is their traditional heritage lot, which again was also shown on the south side of this development, and those will be 65-foot wide lots, kind of the traditional single family. So each of these cul-de-sacs on the east side will kind of be those two-level, and some might have the ability for single-level rambler style homes as well. As I noted before, they've shown a conservation corridor that basically breaks up these two areas of the site. And again, this was done intentionally to provide a natural extension to the city park that's already platted. We noted that there were significant oak trees basically in this corridor area, and the benefit of being able to provide a natural corridor to connect into the park and essentially connect up to the northern limits of the site would be a benefit, not just for the tree preservation there, but also for potential animals and so forth being able to traverse it into the site and into the park area. So that's a big component as to why the layout is shown the way it is so they can provide this very significant connection into the park and usable area that people will be able to walk through and really enjoy the grove of big trees that are present out there. And getting to kind of how people connect into this area, they are showing a couple additional access points, both into the conservation corridor and the park area. So on the west side, they are showing a breakthrough about 20 feet wide to connect into the conservation corridor area. They're also showing another opening on the north side of the easterlymost cul-de-sac to also be able to provide connection into the conservation corridor. And then they are also providing another park entrance in line with the main vehicular entrance into the development itself, which is also consistent with what they did on the south side, connecting into Vista View Drive and providing a park entrance there. So they're continuing that through on the north side here, and are providing equitable locations for people to access the city park area. And then since this subject site area does abut Savannah Way, we've had emphasis on being able to provide adequate screening along this edge abutting Savannah Way, so that's pretty consistent with how the other areas that abut this collector road have been treated. So what they did on the south side basically has to be carried through on this north side, just to show consistency along that collector road. So that's a mix of deciduous and coniferous trees and plantings, plus berming where possible. So there might be a mix of that as we progress northerly as well. And just wanted to note some of the setbacks that are needed. So with the collector road, there's a 100-foot centerline setback, which the developer is showing in their documents and showing to meet, at least at this concept level. In addition, the Highway 212 does have a significant setback that they have shown to meet in their existing conditions exhibit. And because there's going to be a public park and open space area, there will be applicable setbacks to that on the rear yards. And then, in addition, the wetlands do also have a setback requirement that also needs to be met, which kind of gets me into my couple next points of things to consider with their layout as they move forward into the next step in the planning process. So one of the things to look at with the overall layout is the location of the westerly cul-de-sac and the lots that are on the east side of this cul-de-sac. We've noted there's a couple significant trees that are very near to the edges of the rear yards of a couple of these lots, and being able to provide enough space and separation from grading limits and improvements that are bound to happen on this east side to hopefully steer clear of kind of the sensitive or critical root zones of these major trees. So we've noted a 35-inch oak and a 42-inch oak kind of on this cusp of these easterly lots on Harvest Trail in terms of how this edge can be treated or potentially pulled back a little bit to really provide enough space and separation between these lots and grading limits and so forth as development occurs over here. So that's one thing that we'd like the developer to really look at and continue to look at as they prepare for a preliminary, is really how that edge and those trees are being treated and protected through the kind of construction process and how they relate in terms of the grading limits. So we don't have a grading plan at this stage, so it'll be something that we'll have to look at closely in terms of layout of this cul-de-sac and how the grading will occur around those trees. And then secondly, on the east side, the easterlymost cul-de-sac that's abutting Savannah Way, there is that significant wetland just on the south and west sides of Savannah Way that's been delineated and has proven to be a qualitative wetland and needs to be preserved. So there are about 4 lots that are pretty tight up against this wetland that again we'll need the developer to look at this a little bit further in terms of the encroachment into the wetland buffer, which is 30 feet typically, so a 30-foot setback does need to be maintained from these wetlands for buffering. But in addition to that, lot lines should stay outside of wetland delineations, as well as wetland buffers, just to perpetually protect and preserve those natural amenities. So this will be another thing that will need the developer to look at very carefully in terms of, you know, do these lots fit? Are they too tight? Is there ways to potentially work around this area to provide more separation or less of a crunch here, for lack of a better word. And then lastly, the grades between the easterly cul-de-sacs and between them is very, very steep. So with that, we do understand that there's probably going to be some level of retaining wall system having to be put in place between these, and how the grading is going to work with that, and drainage. So something that we'll want to kind of look at a little bit more further in more detail at the preliminary stage, when some of these details do get hashed out in terms of what happens basically along the edge between the blue and the green. Are there retaining walls? Who's going to be maintaining them? So being able to ask those appropriate questions based on what's needed out there. I also wanted to show the housing products that they're proposing out here. So on the top portion, they have their typical single family being proposed. The bigger drawing is something you'll see on their heritage lots or their traditional single family, both on the south side of this development and on the east side of Savannah Way. This product shown in the upper right is essentially that new legacy product that they're hoping to introduce. Again, they're still going through some schematic designs on kind of what these products are going to look like, but they're going to be a little bit different than your traditional single family. So a little bit smaller square footage wise, but we'll still kind of have most of that two-level living, and they'll also offer some Rambler styles as well. And then on the bottom is the detached villa product that they're currently building as well, that will be shown on that westerly cul-de-sac. So the one on the left here is their side load garage design, or one of them, and then one of their front load designs as well. And just a couple other things that'll be attached with this project moving forward is the site will be platted, so they'll have to come in for their preliminary plat and final plat separately. At this time, they envision that the site could be phased, at least have two phases or two platting processes, could be more depending on where the market is sitting and how they wish to address that. And then lastly, they'll need to rezone the property as well, as that didn't get rezoned with the south side. So more than likely, they'll be rezoned to a PRD zoning district to accommodate what they're proposing in this newer section. So with that, we are asking you to make a motion to recommend approval of the concept plan for the Harvest West North based on the conditions that are listed in the staff report. Happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we do have the applicants here as well to help with any other questions.
Thank you,
Liz, I
Liz.
have some
Any questions for Liz?
Yeah, I have some questions and some comments on this. In the engineer's memo, it looked like they stated there's 2 wetlands on site right now. And looking at the preliminary site plan, pretty much all you see on the site plan are roads and rooftops, and that's even before the driveways go in, with the exception of the conservation corridor, of course. So I'm a little concerned about the density here and not really having yards and, places for water to go. These are really tight lots. I know in the Harvest right now, all the homes that are there are predominantly 65-foot width lots, with the exception of, some unique lots that are on the corners and such. And, I live across the county Highway 44 in Founders Ridge, and we have 75-foot minimum lots in my neighborhood. And even today, I still have neighbors that are putting in drain tile 4 years after construction of their home, just because there is drainage problems. There's a high water table, water's got nowhere to go, there's just soupy yards, even with bigger yards. So I'm concerned that could be happening over here in the Harvest as well. It's just, it looks really dense compared to their neighbors to the west in the developed part of the Harvest, or the east, sorry, to the developed part of the Harvest, and then, over on the other side of the county road. So I'd like to, if possible, to put those comments in that if they could increase some of the lot sizes, and you kind of laid that out in your considerations as possible ideas. I think that would help this site greatly.
Thank you. Did you have any questions, or was that?
Is there going to be associations for these homes? And, if so, since the lots are, as designed, really close, and that might be kind of a good thing, since you might be closer to your neighbor's primary bedroom than your kids down the hall.
Yeah, I believe they are going to have associations, but I'll have the applicant kind of detail that out a little bit more in terms of how they're planning to set that up with this north side.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Seiler. Anyone else?
I've got a question, comment, a couple things actually, and I'll kind of echo Commissioner Saylor's comments there too. With, and I live in the Harvest right now, and so when I look at what they're doing with the park and the conservation corridor here, and I know this would be probably more defined within the preliminary plan, but I'd like to make a note that to see how that is finished. So I'm assuming that the conservation corridor will stay somewhat wild with the natural grasses, et cetera, that are in there right now. But wondering more still about what the park would have for, whether it's a mowed lawn, grass, irrigation, et cetera. I know in the park that is over in the second phase of the original Harvest development right now, again, with the water table being high here, it gets pretty soupy over there. And there are people that have drain, there are sump pumps running constantly, so even on a dry day, it's really wet over there. So I don't think the field area gets a whole lot of use out of there from the kids and that stuff running around. And then, so just some note there. And then from a question perspective, I'm assuming they're going to kind of match this up from a landscaping perspective like they've done with their other developments, which I think is really nice, trees on the boulevards, et cetera. But how long is the developer responsible for those trees, and then at what point does the association of homeowners of the city take over?
Typically, the developer is responsible for it until the city accepts the improvements to the development. Sometimes there's warranties in place with some of these trees. The landscaping companies will be able to cover any dead or diseased trees after a certain amount of time. So that can be coordinated with the developer if there's any problems there. But after that, if it's not within an outlot owned by the HOA, then essentially it would, essentially the HOA would take care and maintain more of those common areas perpetually.
Yep. That's all I have.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? And keep in mind, we also do have the developer on the line if you have questions for them.
I do. Susan Cross has questions.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay. One of the things, first of all, I noticed in looking at the developed area already on the other side, east side of Stanaway, I noticed all these piles of dirt. Okay, that's normal when you're doing housing. But where they're put next to the trees that you're supposed to be saving is just, you know, it's pointless. And this is what my great fear with this one, because they are some very nice trees. They say they're going to save them, but where the dirt ends up will probably be around them as opposed to other places. And oaks really don't like sogginess. So the drainage needs to be directed away from the center there. Some of it would be fine, but if sogginess is the routine around homes, it's not going to help the trees at all. That's my comment.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Susan.
Commissioner Riley, I guess, just maybe interject for discussion purposes with the group. There's certainly commissioners here that are more familiar with the topography and the soil conditions than I am, because you live in close proximity. I just wonder about your concerns about water table, and you're hearing over and over mushy soils and drain tiles on properties. That in this next stage, should we request that the developer report back from the soil borings on where the water table is on this property, and how it varies relative to these lots. I just think about it from a homeowner standpoint, that even within my development, there's significant variation in the water table, and there's homes that the sump pump is never turned on, and then there's homes where the sump pump runs continuously, and they've got to have backup, sump pumps with battery systems and et cetera, with a pretty significant cost to those homeowners that they weren't necessarily considering when they bought those properties. So I just throw that out there. Does anyone else?
It's a good point. I don't know how we do it. And your sump pump story, in our neighborhood here where I live, some of the houses that are on top of the hill, they're the ones that actually have the sump pumps that run constantly, and the water then ends up, in the other neighboring homes as it goes away. It's just, everyone just kind of has a little bit of a soupy area.
Do we require, is there a code for water table and?
Yeah, in
And,
terms of,
Maybe you could explain that quick, Kev?
sure, there's building code issues related to water table depths and foundations and things like that. I think a lot of what you hear people talking about and having concerns about is really just the blessing and the curse of Chaska clay. I don't think it really has to do with water table at all, which is why it would match up with the story of neighbors on top of a hill pumping water. It's just the nuances of lenses of tighter clay in certain areas than others. And basically all of Chaska is, as we can see all around us and behind me, is clay. And it's not sand, it's not loam. And so you do wind up with, and you do have to be careful. And we do quite a bit of detail work with the engineering department, between them and the building inspectors, in terms of looking at house plans and making sure that there's drainage and grading away from homes in neighborhoods, trying to minimize those issues to the extent possible.
Okay. Thank you,
So
Kevin.
Kevin, would yard size be a solution, or is that not a solution?
It's not really a solution, because you could make the yards bigger, and if the soils are tight, really tight clay in those areas, it's still going to pool water. We have infiltration issues. Part of it might be exacerbated by people overly irrigating their yards in some instances. Other instances, it's just that there's tight lenses of clay in certain areas. But typically, especially, I mean, this area is significantly higher than most of Chaska, and so it's the area where water drains off of, not to. And so you wouldn't anticipate, I mean, there were obviously some localized areas near wetlands and things like that where you have to pay even more attention. But generally speaking, there's a significant amount of grade across this site. And typically water tables aren't as big of an issue in those areas. I don't know what the grade is between the wooded area of the park on the south side and maybe the northerly edge of the extension of Savannah Road, but it's pretty significant.
It is.
If you've been out there, between those two roads, there's a fair amount of grade. And so moving water on the surface isn't technically going to be that hard. You're going to be more worried about where there's retaining walls and things that are blocking it, and making sure that you have good paths for water to move in this area. And a lot of that, are great points to bring up, and things that the developer can respond to during the preliminary platting, showing, details of close up to houses of how they're moving the water around those homes.
This topography changes also lends to the character of the
It does.
Development as well.
Right.
It's a cool area out there.
Yeah, it's a very pretty portion of that property. That's for certain.
If we don't have any other questions for Liz, would the developer like to make any comments before we continue on? I am not hearing anything, so I think we will move on and look for a motion to recommend the approval of the concept plan. Anyone?
This is Commissioner Nelson. I'll make the motion to recommend to the City Council to approve the Harvest West North concept plan for the 119 lot subdivision on the 48-acre land in the southwest Chaska growth area, subject to the following 22 conditions.
Yep, 22. Thank you,
Commissioner Urbanski, I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Urbanski. Any further discussion?
I would like to just make one comment. It always makes me nervous that even in the concept plan, we come up with a number of lots. I realize the concept plan isn't written in stone, but sometimes if this committee chooses to change the numbers, I think it's somewhat awkward. But that's just my viewpoint, because I don't think we have enough spots for 119 lots.
Pretty tight.
All right, thank you, Susan. Okay, not hearing any other comments. Liz, would you take the roll, please?
Okay. Commissioner Brass,
Aye.
Cross,
Aye.
Lacey,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Riley, Seiler,
Aye.
Bovee, Urbanski, and Chairperson Delphi.
Aye.
I show it as 9-0.
All right, we have a 9-0 vote to approve the concept plan. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Liz, for your presentation. Let's move on to item 8 of the agenda, which is simply reading in the minutes of the June 1st and June 15th City Council meeting and the draft minutes of the June 15th EDA meeting. Those have now been read into the minutes. And before we adjourn, we'll do our virtual roundtable. Anybody like to make any comments? Now's your chance.
I think 41's really nice. Finished construction, the roundabout.
Okay.
I'll have to go up there.
I think it's working very well so far.
All right.
Because
Yeah.
my wife and actually all three of us in our house use that a lot, and I was expecting some significant backups entering the roundabouts, and so far it's not happening. Now, when school finally starts and things are normal, that may be different, but right now it's extremely smooth.
Yeah, it turned out nice.
Very nice. Do we have an idea of when Savannah Way would be brought all the way to Creek Road?
I do not off the top of my head. I think it's going to be a little while. I think it's going to be more associated with the reconstruction on Creek Road itself, particularly with the opening of the interchange that took some of the pressure off that piece. But I don't know the schedule, but I'm guessing it's in relatively near term, but not, I don't think it's imminent in terms of construction. I know they've got the permits from the Corps, and I don't think they've placed the culverts across the creek yet, which is kind of the first step, and then we have to get rid of the house and that we purchased on the Cottrell property and some of the outbuildings there, which is going to take a little bit of time to remove, and so probably a year or two, I'm guessing.
With the approval of the concept plan tonight, that doesn't include anything to do with their, Savannah Way is not affected by that at all.
No.
It's pretty much stayed the way it is.
Yep.
Will Savannah Way still go all the way to Angler?
Yeah, eventually, yeah.
Yeah, and that's probably a good thing now that you mentioned earlier that Creek Road's gonna have the roundabouts. You can't go down to downtown that way. I know that's a pretty tough intersection. Those folks going south on Creek, then trying to turn left on Chaska Boulevard, sit there forever.
Yeah, right. So really depends on when we bring the sewer up Creek Road, which will serve the industrial area to the west of 212. That'll probably play into that timing of the finalization of Savannah Way.
All right.
Kevin, how's Sagewood 3 coming along?
The developer is still working on that project. They're trying, I think, very hard to figure out some alternate access pieces that are feasible. You know, there's lots of things you can draw, but to actually build and pay for is a bit challenging, and so they're kind of working through that, and it takes time, and I think give them credit for continuing to work on it because they're within a house or two of being done in the second edition. so,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
so they're
kind of
gonna,
expected timeframe when it might come back to us?
I do not know. I do not know. I know they're continuing to work and try and come up with some solutions, and they've been looking at some alternatives, but at this point, they have not really come back to us yet with kind of a, we think, here's what we think could work. And so, but I know they're continuing to ask lots of questions and pursuing numerous options, but they're trying to, they're doing their homework, and they're doing what the planning commission, the neighbors, and the council asked of them, which is to explore that, and that's what they're doing, and it takes time. And unfortunately, it's not going to work out.
Yeah, it seemed like the council had a pretty strong mandate to find a win-win, so it's great to hear that they're giving that good effort.
Yeah, D.R. Horton's, you know, done a lot of work in Chaska, and, you know, I think they want to continue to do that. And they've been a good partner, and we've been a good partner to them as a community. And, you know, I think they're, you know, trying to put a really solid effort into it. And whether they're successful in the end, I don't really know. But at this point, like I said, with this, I think they were very interested in trying to tie it and extend their second phase. But I think it's going to be a little delayed because, like I said, I think they only have 1 or 2 lots left, and so so they'll pull out their, you know, open house people and all that, and I think they were trying to avoid some of that remobilization costs and everything that goes with that, and, you know, which adds to the project cost, and so I think they're trying to balance all that, but they're still working very hard, and Liz and I and Matt Clark probably get an email every 3 or 4 days from them with a particular question about something, or a connection, or utilities, or wetland elevations, and so I know that they're working very hard in that area, which is, you know, which is what they said they would do.
Good to hear.
Great, thanks for the update.
Yep.
Right. Anyone else?
I would just like to say, now that we've got that wonderful roundabout on 41, don't forget, they're going to do the underpass before Highway 5 under 41. That trail funding was just now approved, and hopefully what they do this year will only be working on the trail and not on the underpass going under 41.
All right. I would just like to mention, Commissioner Lacey, I read about you in the paper this week. It looked like you took a kind of a leadership role in the round table with the police department, and it looked like it was constructive and interesting.
It was a good opportunity for residents to meet the new chief, Ryan Siebert, and discuss their concerns. And yeah, it was very, very productive, and hopefully it will continue. We have a good balance now, and it'll be good to see it continue.
All right. Well, thank you for your work on that. So, anyone else? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Nobody
I'll
wants
make
to
a
leave.
motion to adjourn.
I was going to say someone wants to get out of here, I'm assuming.
It's not that
Second.
nice outside. Nobody wants to go outside.
Everybody wants to sit in the air-conditioned house. All right. Did we get a second?
I'll second.
All right. Thank you, sir. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Thank you, everyone. And stay cool.
Thanks.
Take care.
Take care.